The optimal outcome of a serve in volleyball is to execute an unreturnable serve. The jump float serve is highly effective in achieving this outcome. It falls on 1D on Gentile taxonomy as it involves no intertriable variability. The environment is stable, the body is in motion, and there's an object in play. It is also a skill that is closed, self-paced, serial, gross, has a high complexity and organization, and is discrete. This is a locomotor and manipulative skill. To achieve this type of serve, the server must strike the ball at the peak of its height with maximum force, at a downward angle. The higher the point of impact, the sharper the downward angle of the serve.
Subconcepts we've identified in this movement are levels, pathways, extensions, force, flow, relationships with body parts as seen by the intramuscular and intermuscular coordination required, and relationships with objects as seen by the athlete striking the volleyball.
The learner has prior experience in basketball and power and jump training. They have little experience in volleyball. They are in the control area of skill proficiency as identified by their basic grasp of the movement and the high amount of errors.
As the activity is a serial skill and is highly complex and high in organisation, the learner was required to combine and flow various difficult movements into one. Therefore, we used a part practice method where their activity is building up sequentially as each component of the skill is practiced separately and then combined into one movement. The first activity we used was called identifying the run-up. This was used as it programmed the footwork required to properly utilise the approach steps as a loading mechanism to build up and transfer the combination of the body's forces and execute a high vertical leap. This worked on teaching the athlete to lower their centre of mass as the hips, knees and ankles enter flexion and dorsiflexion and apply force to the ground to propel themselves off the floor.
The second activity is identifying when to toss. Now that the footwork has been trained, we can begin to add movements into this and flow them together. The activity teaches the learner how and when to perform an upward toss. The ball is tossed before their penultimate step, making sure to follow the ball to the optimal height. The learner is not striking the ball yet, as we wish for them to focus on just the toss. This introduces the learner to the idea of extensions with their arm, levels with ball height, flowing their movements together, and the object relationship as they grasp the weight and the size of the ball. As more repetitions are performed, the flow of the movement becomes more seamless.
The third activity now focuses on finishing the movement with a high and powerful leap. The athlete is still not striking the ball yet, as we're still programming the basic skill themes and movement concepts. We're ensuring that the learner is remaining stiff and springy and not lowering themselves too much in order to conserve energy for the subsequent contraction. The learner is attempting to have as little ground contact time as possible once the toss is up to effectively utilise the stress shortening cycle and create as much force as they can. This furthers the athlete's understanding of respective subconcepts such as force, as they must now apply it to the ground to propel their bodies upwards, and combining subconcepts as they must now time the extension of their joints to effectively triple extend and drive their hips to achieve high force and move through the levels.
The fourth activity now has the learner striking the ball. By having them train the strike as a separate movement, we are able to reduce the complexity of the task by removing body transport whilst effectively teaching the correct motor pattern. We can identify this reduction in complexity by observing Gentile's taxonomy and its placement at 1B. This further develops the athlete's understanding of the subconcepts used such as force and flow, as they are now applying force into the ball and reinforcing the pre-established notions of relationships with body and objects, and extensions, and levels and pathways.
The fifth activity is identifying the float. The athlete now tries to float the ball by striking it at the midline, attempting to reduce as much backspin as possible. This can be achieved by reducing the hand surface on the ball. As this is a complex and more technical motor skill, volume and variety should be the primary focus to improve their ability.
The final stage of the sequential progression is flowing the movements together. At this stage, the learner should have developed a sound understanding of each aspect of the skill and the subconcepts that underpin it, whilst being able to perform the necessary skill themes, such as jumping, striking, and loading into a jump. At this stage, the learner must focus on performing a high amount of reps in various scenarios to effectively learn the complete motor pattern.